My brother is a mob boss. When he got amnesia, I lied and told him we were lovers. We did everything you're supposed to do, and everything you're not. But everyone who's ever dared to lie to him has ended up dead. And now he's pressing a gun to my head. I never thought Gary would get his memory back so fast. To be honest, the situation was a bit of a mess. I was straddling his lap, my white shirt half on, half off, tangled around my arms. He wasn't in much better shape. His shirt was wide open, his neck dotted with a few dark red marks. A moment ago, his eyes were clouded with lust. The next, they were so cold he looked at me like I was already dead. Anyone else would probably be shaking in their boots. But I'm different. I have a special talent. I'm not afraid to die. I kept a smile on my face as I slowly raised my hands, bringing them together in front of my forehead. I wrapped my fingers around the gun barrel. The cold metal spread through my palm. Gary didn't shoot, so I pushed my luck, guiding the barrel slowly from my forehead down to my heart. His Adam's apple bobbed. A shot to the head is messy, Gary. Aim for the heart. Let me die in your arms. Gary didn't take my suggestion. The gun started moving down. The cold muzzle slithered over my body like a snake, from top to bottom, then bottom to top. Finally, it slid into my mouth. The barrel gagged me, forcing my head back. That tide of desire was rising in his eyes again. His voice was low and hoarse when he spoke. One shot and it's over? You wish. Let me teach you what a fate worse than death really feels like. By the time I came to from a high fever, 3 days had passed. I sat up in a soft, round bed. The room was lavishly decorated. It was the master bedroom of Gary's villa. Looks like he really had his memory back. In just 3 days, he'd made it from a safe house deep in the mountains back to his own turf. I got dressed and went downstairs. The villa was empty except for the housekeeper. After forcing down a few sips of vegetable porridge, I headed out. Gary must have given the order beforehand, because the goons at the door didn't follow me. Once I was far enough away, I pulled out my phone. In my inbox was a spammy ad from an unknown number. I dialed it. Someone picked up but said nothing. "It's me," I said. After a few seconds of silence, the line went dead. A moment later, a second text from the same number came through. The usual spot. Now, I read it, then deleted it, and started for the meeting place. Well, long time no see, my dearest little brother. In the dimly lit VIP room, Justin Vaughn, the family's number 2 son, was lounging among a group of scantily clad women. When I pushed the door open, he raised his glass to me. The second I sat down, he threw an arm around me, ordering the girls to make sure I was taken care of. I was immediately swarmed by eager women. Someone unbuttoned my shirt, revealing a chest covered in marks. "Come on, Justin. I'm not here to play today." I pushed them away, trying to pull my shirt closed. Justin didn't say anything, just watched with a smirk as the women's hands roamed all over me. When he'd had his fun, he finally spoke. All right, that's enough. Get out. Don't want to scare my dear brother off." The women pouted but reluctantly left. Once the room was quiet, he lit a cigarette and blew a cloud of smoke right in my face. Watching me button my shirt, he said playfully, "So defensive? What, you've been broken in and now you can't stand a woman's touch?" I shifted away, putting some distance between us. "Stop joking around, Justin. Let's get down to business." Justin kept smoking, a smirk on his face. After a long pause, he said, "Fine. No more games. Let's talk business." This time, I was sitting on the sofa across from Justin, talking like equals. But the last time, in this very same room, I was on my knees with his goons holding me down, my face a bloody mess. Back then, he had laughed wildly as he poured a drink over my head, then grabbed my chin and forced me to look at him. "I never would have guessed, little brother. I always thought you were Big Brother's loyal little dog. Turns out you've been doing dirty deeds behind his back." He leaned in close, his voice a soft whisper. "Bad little doggy. Bark for me. If you make me happy, I'll let you off the hook." I did respond to him, with a string of 4-letter words. So later, while calling me a useless mutt, he ground my head into the floor with his boot. Everyone in the Vaughn family knew I was Gary's dog. But I wasn't a loyal one. I was secretly meeting with his rivals. And Justin had caught me red-handed. With that leverage and a brutal beating, he forced me into a deal. The Vaughns had a major shipment coming in by sea and needed someone to handle the pickup. Gary was originally assigned to the job. But Justin wanted to snatch the shipment for himself and take over the route. Our deal was simple: an assassination attempt on Gary. During his escape, Gary hit his head and temporarily lost parts of his memory. But the bastard was tough. Not only did he survive, but he managed to get us both to a safe house. We were holed up in there for 3 months. 3 months. Long enough for Justin to completely take over the shipment and the route. And long enough for me to climb into my brother's bed. Toast, my good brother, to another successful partnership. Justin naturally assumed I would continue to work with him. He raised his glass with a triumphant look on his face. But I just waved my hand, not even taking the glass. You've got it wrong, Justin. I came here today to make things clear. Our partnership is over. Watching someone's face change is a fascinating thing, especially Justin's. 1 second he was smiling, the next his smile was frozen solid. His face cycled through a rainbow of colors, like a clown. But he was Gary's brother by blood after all. By the time his expression settled, he had a gun pointed at my forehead. Justin launched into a speech trying to threaten and bribe me into working for him again. But things were different now. We were even. This time, it was my turn to smile at him. Justin, we both know the truth about the assassination attempt on our brother won't hold up under scrutiny. You were in it for the profit. I was in it to survive. We're square now. From now on, you stay out of my way and I'll stay out of yours. Everyone stays safe. Justin was the illegitimate son of his father's mistress, only brought into the family after the first wife died. His position was still shaky. So no matter how arrogant he was terrified of his big brother, Gary, or his father, Arthur Vaughn, finding out about his little schemes. He stared at me with cold eyes, then lowered the gun and told me to get lost. Just as I reached the door, he called out to me again. Being Gary's dog will be the biggest mistake of your life, Julian. He's a cold-blooded bastard. You know Mr. Lee, the family retainer his mother left him? The one who served him for years. How long do you really think you'll last working for him? I just smiled and left without another word. I wasn't in a hurry to get back. I just wandered the streets. A black car in the distance had been following me for a while, keeping its distance. Shaking a tail is second nature to me. But I had a good idea who was in that car. And he wouldn't be happy if I just disappeared on my own. He only likes it when I'm obedient. So I took out my phone and dialed a number. Gary, are you here for me? I'm lost. Can you take me home? Little tricks like this always made Gary happy. And when he's happy, my life is easier. I slid into the passenger seat and immediately unstrapped the dagger tied to my calf. Gary didn't even glance at it, just kept driving. After a moment, he spoke. You've got good counter-surveillance instincts. I opened my eyes and looked at him. In the glow of the streetlights, his expression was calm, indifferent. In our line of work, Gary, if you're not sharp, you end up in a jail cell. His response was just as flat. Seeing he wasn't going to say more, I closed my eyes to doze off. But he rolled up the window. He said I just got over a fever and shouldn't be in the draft. It was almost midnight by the time we got back to Gary's villa. After parking, he lit a cigarette, took one drag, and then just held it between his fingers. Gary had incredible features. Relaxed and world-weary like this, he could probably charm anyone, man or woman. He didn't get out of the car, so I stayed put. Noticing I hadn't moved, he turned and asked me what was wrong. I casually undid the top 2 buttons of my shirt. I did what you asked, Gary. Don't I get a reward? He raised an eyebrow at me. I reached over and took the cigarette from between his fingers. This will do. I put my lips where his had been and took a light drag. He let out a low chuckle, plucked the cigarette from my mouth, and leaned in. Is that all you want? His lips were so damn sexy. I leaned in too, grabbing the collar of his shirt to pull him down. And then I kissed him. We didn't take things any further that night. Gary got a call from his father, Arthur Vaughn, and had to leave. I took a shower. As the steam filled the room, I stared into the mirror. Looking at that face, my thoughts started to drift. 2 years ago, it was this face that brought me into the Vaughn family. Years ago, Arthur had a great love, the one that got away. But she died young, and I was her son. Arthur took me in as his godson. Just like that, I became the family's third young master. But I never took the Vaughn name. For one, I wasn't Arthur's biological son. For two, he thought the name Julian was beautiful. He said I should keep it in my mother's memory. Arthur even got a reputation for being a devoted romantic because of it. That lasted until I discovered his secret habit in his bedroom. The videos of his orgies. The stars were usually good-looking young men and women. The content was bloody, violent, and utterly depraved. It made me think about how Arthur always insisted I keep my hair long, how he loved to stroke my cheek. A chilling sensation washed over me. Arthur Vaughn had twisted desires for me, but I couldn't leave the family. Not yet. The turning point came when Gary returned from abroad. He came back to take over some of Arthur's domestic operations. Looking at that cold, stoic face, I thought, this guy can't be as messed up as the old man. At least he wasn't repulsive to look at. Compared to sticking around a perverted old creep, becoming one of Gary's underlings seemed like a much better option. So when I knelt before him, I pledged my loyalty with all the sincerity I could muster. I told him if he'd take me, I'd be his workhorse, his slave. I'd do whatever he asked, no questions, no second thoughts. If he'd protect me, I'd bang my head on the floor for him right then and there. But he just scoffed. He pinched my face, looking down at me. "You'd do anything? Think carefully, little master. I'm even more twisted than that old bastard." Gary was telling the truth. He was a real psycho. The very first day he took me from Arthur, he had me strung up in his private torture room. He grabbed my throat, his face close to mine, and whispered, "Who are you?" I was about to pass out. My voice was a raw rasp when I answered, "I'm Julian." My head was pounding from lack of oxygen. Then he let go, only to grab me from behind, pulling me back against him. He whispered in my ear, "Little imposter, you can fool the old man, but you won't live long trying to fool me." His dark eyes stared into mine, and a chill shot up my spine. His next words plunged me into an icy abyss. "Don't you know? Julian is already dead. I killed him myself. Right here. One stab." His finger traced a slow circle over my heart, right through my shirt. My eyes went wide, and my body started to tremble uncontrollably. He seemed pleased by my reaction. He let me go and picked up a long, thick whip from a rack of instruments. He spoke softly. "Now, my dear little brother, let's play a game. Guess whether or not I'm going to let you live." It was much later that my suspicions at the time were confirmed. That torture session was a test from Arthur to verify my identity. Gary was just the executioner, and Arthur was sitting in a hidden room, watching everything silently. Back then, the only way to survive was to make him believe I really was Julian. And I had the proof. I have an old scar on my chest. I knew everything about Julian. I could recount the entire story of the night he was attacked. When Julian was 18, he was caught in an assassination attempt. The original target was his mother. But Julian, who had taken the day off from school, happened to be home. Trapped with no way out, he was stabbed in the chest by a masked killer. Honestly, even a professional would have had a hard time finding a hole in my story. I told them the truth, about 90% of it, and my entire performance was carefully orchestrated. But he wasn't going to believe me that easily. He wanted to pry that one flaw out of me. Gary continued to torture me with all sorts of methods. When I was about to pass out, he'd inject me with something to force me awake. He'd whisper in my ear, tempting me, telling me if I just told the truth, the pain would stop. I was on the verge of a mental breakdown. He scrambled all the questions, asking them over and over in a different order. A sharp blade pressed against my throat. One slip-up, one contradiction, and my blood would splatter across the room. He asked me again who I was. "I'm Julian," I managed to croak out. He kicked me hard in the stomach. I swung back and forth like a punching bag. I thought he would keep going. But then he suddenly stopped. He just stood there watching me in silence. The only sound in the dim room was my own ragged breathing. The sudden pause made my frayed nerves snap. Then, the excruciating pain I had been suppressing erupted from every part of my body. I saw stars, and my ears were ringing. My consciousness started to slip. And right at that moment, he asked another question. He asked if the person who saved me was Mike Lee. He did it on purpose. He deliberately waited until I was disoriented to ask. It was the first time this question had come up. And the way he asked it was incredibly insidious. But the truth was, the information the police received was a leak planted by Arthur himself. The real informant had been killed before he could send his message. And back then, he was using an alias. He told Julian his name was Joe. I had studied the Vaughn family's files in detail. In his early years, Arthur Vaughn was just a low-level debt collector for Old Man Lee. But Old Man Lee's only daughter fell for him. From then on, Arthur's rise was meteoric. After Old Man Lee died, there was no one left to keep Arthur in check. He climbed to the top over the bodies of the Lee family. Before she died, Old Man Lee's daughter, as revenge against Arthur, sent assassins after Julian's mother. With his great love dead, Arthur went completely insane. That was the start of the bloody infighting within the Vaughn family. Arthur was too busy with the power struggle to look after Julian, so he sent Mike to stay by his side, partly for protection, partly for house arrest. Mike was from the Lee family, but he had sworn allegiance to Arthur years ago. With Mike's help, Arthur inflicted heavy losses on the Lees during the infighting. But then something went wrong. Arthur walked into a trap. Mike had to leave Julian to rescue him. The Lees seized the opportunity, broke in, and kidnapped Julian. And Julian was never seen again. Arthur seeing Julian again was a complete coincidence. His men had intercepted a shipment on the high seas, and I was part of the cargo. My life had been a string of bad luck. The Lees had sold me for cheap to a scam ring. Because I was terrible at it, I was almost chopped up and sold for parts. But then someone took a liking to my face, and I became part of this shipment. In a strange twist of fate, I ended up back in Arthur's hands. Of course, if he had believed my story that easily, he wouldn't be Arthur Vaughn. He had always been suspicious of my identity. He suspected I wasn't Julian, and he suspected I was an undercover cop. But he could never find any trace of me contacting the outside world. Because from the moment I first saw Arthur, I had cut off all communication with my handler. I was waiting for this test. My answer once again contained the truth. I said the man who saved me was named Joe. That answer kept me alive. But the torment was just beginning. Gary holds a grudge. During the interrogation, delirious with pain, I had screamed at him. I roared that if he had the guts, he should just kill me, otherwise I would kill him one day. Because of that one sentence, he decided to train me like a dog. When the interrogation was finally over, he gently wiped the blood from my face, smiling as he did. Plenty of people want to kill me. You'll have to get in line. But you're a tough one. I'm very curious to see how long it takes to break a spirit like yours and turn you into a dog. I wanted to curse him out again, but I had no strength left. The world went black, and I passed out completely. Gary's methods for training a dog were endlessly creative. At my lowest point, I even started to suspect I really had become a dog, wagging its tail and begging for scraps. Then one day, on a whim, he said he was going to take me out to see the world. We drove into the mountains. There was a patch of overgrown wasteland. He asked me if I knew what this place was. Seeing my confusion, he chuckled softly and told me. It was an unmarked graveyard, filled with traitors the Vaughns had buried alive. I was so shocked I couldn't speak, just stared blankly at the lush vegetation. These bastards are insane, I thought at the time. Then he added, "You really think there are people buried under here? I'm messing with you." I was about to retract my horrified expression when he continued in a flat tone. Traitors to the Vaughn family don't get such a nice burial. Traitors, they only deserve to be. This time, he didn't wait for my reaction. He tugged on the chain he had around my neck and pulled me forward. We walked in silence until we came upon a small mound of dirt. In front of the mound was a small, nameless wooden tablet. Gary led me over to it. "Go on," he said. "Pay your respects to the man who saved your life." This was Mike's grave. Gary told me that Mike had been his mother's servant from the Lee family, but he'd secretly been Arthur's dog for years. As he spoke, he lit a cigarette and stuck it in the dirt in front of the grave. Grayish-blue smoke curled up from the tip, scattered by the wind. But dogs that don't listen to their master don't live very long. Gary told me that after Mike helped Arthur become the boss, he got ambitious. He was no longer content with just being a dog. He started disobeying Arthur's orders. You know how he died? Gary gave a slight nod, and his men forced me to my knees. A gun was pressed to my forehead. Just like this, a gunshot rang out. His head just exploded. The bullet whizzed past my temple. Not long after that gunshot, everyone in the Vaughn family learned something new. Gary had successfully trained another obedient dog. After we came back from the safe house, Gary had me move into his villa. Our relationship became ambiguous. By day, I was still his gopher, his lapdog. At night, I was more, but he didn't come back to the villa often. When he was away, I'd sleep in the guest room. Tonight was no different, but I was woken up in the middle of the night. Gary was back. The noise wasn't loud, but I'm a light sleeper. He was downstairs talking business with his right-hand man, and I was at my door, eavesdropping. I listened for a while but couldn't pick up anything important, so I crawled back into bed. Bored, I started to feign sleep. I knew he would come find me. Half an hour later, he pushed open my bedroom door. Something warm and moist gently touched my lips. I didn't move, pretending to be fast asleep. He was patient and cruel. A hand traced a line from my cheek, down my neck, and stopped at my collarbone. His calloused fingers lingered there, tickled. He suddenly leaned close to my ear. His hot breath made my ear burn. "You little dummy," he chuckled smugly. "Still gonna pretend?" I opened my eyes and pushed at him with my right hand, complaining that he was disturbing my sleep, but he caught my wrist. He said naughty puppies had to be punished. I saw the leather belt dangling from his other hand, so I obediently held out my left hand as well. "Then punish me, Gary," I said. His eyes darkened, and the smile on his face grew wider. I thought he was going to tie my hands, but he didn't. His voice was hoarse. "Not your hands tonight. Tonight I want to see what a little puppy does when its legs are tied." It was a long night. The wind blew the curtains aside, slowly revealing the deep blue canvas of the night sky. It was dotted with countless stars. I looked at them, and thousands of stars danced their way into my eyes. The whole world felt like it was sinking into a turbulent sea of stars. The waves surged, lifting me high and then crashing me down again. I thought I was going to drown in this ocean, but someone wouldn't let me go. He kissed the back of my neck, then sadistically held me back. "Beg me," he said, "and I'll let you go." But I knew it was useless to beg. Gary was a dirty liar. He loved tricking people into begging, only to torment them even more. I'd learned that lesson well during our 3 months in the safe house. I turned my head and called him a liar. He covered my mouth with his hand and scolded me softly, telling me good little puppies aren't allowed to curse. As tears fell, he pulled me into his arms, holding me tight. His warm, ragged breath fanned across my earlobe. He whispered, asking if I felt like I was about to die. I bit my lower lip, refusing to answer him. In that moment, my soul was struggling in an abyss. I was about to die, painfully. Sometimes your senses get scrambled, twisted. Physical pleasure can be accompanied by 1,000 times more mental anguish. Pleasure and pain are both forms of torture. In the end, they either drive you mad or destroy you. But I couldn't turn back. I had to see this through to the bitter end. I started at the bottom of Gary's crew, as a gatekeeper. He dumped me in the middle of nowhere and told me to watch a gate. For half a year, I was a good little gatekeeper for 6 months. He was pleased, so he promoted me to be one of his personal lackeys. But he always kept me on a short leash, only letting me do menial tasks. The people and business I could access were limited. My original plan was to work my way up from the bottom, to become one of his trusted inner circle. I never imagined my path would veer so wildly off course. After being around him for a while, I figured out Gary wasn't into women. But the first time I realized something was really off was the opening night of his new club. He had a slender young man sitting on his lap. After half a glass of wine, the boy's fair cheeks started to blush. He looked as delicate as a dew-covered flower bud. With hazy eyes, he wrapped his arms around Gary's neck and asked for a kiss. Gary smiled, cupped the back of the boy's neck, and kissed him passionately. Like the other goons, I was standing silently in a dark corner, part of the scenery. But then Gary suddenly opened his eyes. He was still in the middle of a heated kiss, but there wasn't a trace of intoxication in his eyes. They were slightly narrowed, his gaze radiating an undisguised aggression and possessiveness. Like a predator, poised to strike, slowly baring its fangs at its prey. I tentatively shifted my position, but his eyes remained locked on me. I froze, going back to being a silent piece of the background. But my palms were soaked with cold sweat. I realized the prey he had his eyes on was me. Honestly, I spent a long time mentally preparing myself. But then, nothing happened. Something else did. The Vaughn family's sea shipment was about to arrive. This shipment was crucial. It was connected to several of Arthur's major domestic operations. It was also crucial to our plan, because whoever took over this shipment would have to stay in the country for at least a year. My mission at the time was to gather intelligence and act when the time was right. Arthur had originally assigned Gary to handle it, but Justin wanted it too. Surprisingly, Gary offered to give the shipment and the route to his brother. At the time, I figured he was probably setting a trap to screw Justin over later. Or maybe he was using Justin as a shield. That way, if Arthur decided to use one of his sons as a scapegoat before skipping town, it wouldn't be so easy. There was another possibility, of course, but it was so absurd that I didn't give it much thought back then. Gary's plan was for me to pretend to betray him. He had me meet with his rivals, making sure Justin would find out. Everything that followed went almost exactly according to Gary's plan. There was just one unexpected hiccup. He lost his memory. After losing his memory, Gary got the wrong idea about our relationship. But it was a chance, a high-stakes gamble. Time was precious. I couldn't afford to be a low-level goon forever. The moment he wrapped his arms around me from behind, I made my decision. I went along with his misunderstanding, letting it all happen. And starting from that decision, every day since, I have been perfectly lucid, watching myself rot away, piece by piece. But what could I do? There was no turning back. The sky outside the window was beginning to lighten. Gary leaned against the sofa by the window, a cigarette dangling from his lips. He was shirtless, his muscular torso covered in a sprawling tattoo. It spread from his chest all the way to his lower back. Underneath the ink, a network of old scars crisscrossed his skin. I reached out, tracing the edge of the tattoo, inch by inch, until my hand rested over his heart. The skin there was smooth, unmarred. He caught my hand. I tried to meet his eyes, but he exhaled a cloud of smoke. His face was obscured by the gray haze. Indistinct. Gary, what are we now? He kept smoking, not saying a word, but he was still facing me, as if he were watching me through the smoke. It gave me a strange feeling, as if the man before me was someone from a long time ago. Then he suddenly answered my question. Exactly what you want us to be. Just then, the smoke cleared, but he had already turned his head away, no longer looking at me. With this new relationship, life got a lot easier. Gary never said it out loud, but he doted on me more and more. I was given access to more and more things. I sent out intelligence more frequently. It was dangerous, life or death work, but it was all going so smoothly, abnormally smoothly, the kind of smooth that sends a chill down your spine. I had a bad feeling that something was about to happen, and not long after, something did. The main reason Arthur Vaughn dared to stay in the country was because the police still lacked the key evidence needed to uproot the entire Vaughn family. their network of protectors, and all their operations. The cunning old fox was certainly skilled. But his son wasn't. This time it was Justin who screwed up. Justin was too greedy and too sloppy. He finally left a trail someone could follow. Arthur was just as ruthless with his own son. Justin was beaten to a pulp. His face a bloody mess. He crawled to Arthur's feet, banging his head on the floor, begging his father to spare his life. He said there was a cop on the inside. He said he could find the mole, that he would trade the cop's life for his own. There are 2 rats in the Vaughn family. He paused, gasping for breath, then suddenly whipped his head around. His bloody face stared straight at Gary, and at me standing behind him. Justin spat out a mouthful of blood and continued, "One of them is right by Big Brother's side." I honestly had no idea how many undercover cops had infiltrated the Vaughn family. Our identities were top secret. One wrong move could compromise the entire operation. We only ever contacted our own handlers. I wasn't sure if I had been exposed, but trying to run now would be a mistake. For one, the Vaughns were watching everything. Too closely escape was nearly impossible. For 2, it would be a dead giveaway. I had to take my chances. Fortunately, I had already passed on a lot of crucial intel. If I did get caught, it wouldn't be a total loss. Soon, the Vaughns found 2 people. One of them was Gary's driver. By the time Arthur summoned me, both had already been brutally tortured. He waved me over to his side. I had to step over pools of blood to reach him. He put his arm around me, pointed at the 2 bloody heaps on the floor, and asked if I was scared. They barely looked human anymore. Their limbs were bent and twisted at unnatural angles. But they must have been drugged, because they were still conscious. Justin sat in a wheelchair, a sadistic grin on his face, poking one of the men's legs with an iron rod. Gary stood a short distance away, watching everything with cold indifference. My heart tightened, and my throat went dry. I wanted nothing more than to take down the monster beside me right then and there. But I couldn't. I could only force myself to look terrified. Arthur traced a finger along my cheek. He leaned in close, whispering in my ear, "You look just like your mother when you're scared. Like a little rabbit. It makes one want to protect you." He handed me a glass of wine and told me to drink. The liquid inside was dark red, like the blood on the floor. He wasn't asking. He pressed the glass to my lips and poured the entire thing down my throat. I choked, coughing violently. He praised me for being an obedient boy and said he was going to show me how the world really works. Arthur wanted me to watch with my own eyes how he executed the 2 men. I was taken to the dog yard. It was filled with starving, vicious dogs. I realized then that what Gary had said all that time ago wasn't a joke. The men were thrown in. They were torn apart as easily as a loaf of bread. Arthur had his men hold me up. I was forced to watch the entire thing. And he sat nearby, watching my face with great interest. When it was over, his men let me go. My legs gave out and I collapsed to my knees. The smell of blood flooded my senses, and I started to vomit uncontrollably. Blood rushed to my temples. Through the intense ringing in my ears, I could hear Arthur speaking. He was gloating. He said this is what happens to those who cross him. Later, Arthur and his men left. I stayed on the ground, kneeling, too sick to stand. It wasn't until a clap of thunder broke the silence and the sky opened up in a downpour, soaking me to the bone, that I finally let my tears fall, hidden by the rain. After being out in the rain, I came down with a high fever. I was like a half-dead dog, lying weakly in bed, drifting in and out of consciousness. Whenever I fell asleep, I was plunged into a chaotic mess of dreams. I dreamt of a day in high school. My parents had died, and I had been sent to live with my uncle. I was devastated by their deaths, and I was depressed all the time. I started skipping class, getting into fights, smoking. Anything a bad kid would do, I did it. I skipped class again that day. My homeroom teacher had pulled me aside for a talk. She didn't mean any harm, but what she said hit a nerve. She asked me if I thought my parents would be proud of how I was acting. What the hell did she know? My parents never had time for me. They were always busy. I knew they were busy. busy chasing bad guys all over the world. And then they died. And just like that, they left me behind. I was hiding on the roof of the school building, smoking. I squinted, looking down. The grounds below were quiet. Not a soul in sight. If I jumped right now, it would probably be a long time before anyone even found me. I laughed at the thought, a bitter, self-mocking sound. When I turned around, I nearly jumped out of my skin. The class president was standing right behind me. God knows how long he'd been there, not making a sound. He scared the shit out of me. "What are you doing? You scared me." I snapped at him. He wasn't just my class president, he was also my uncle's neighbor's kid. We weren't close before, but we got to know each other a little after becoming neighbors. He didn't answer my question. He just sat down across from me and pulled a pack of cigarettes out of his school pants. A brand I'd never tried. He expertly tapped one out, lit it, and put it to his lips. As I stared in disbelief, he held the pack out to me and asked if I wanted one. I didn't hesitate. I took one and lit up. His cigarettes were better than mine. "I didn't know good students smoked," I said, taking a drag. He just smiled. "It helps me relax." We stayed on that roof until school let out. In the warm glow of the setting sun, he asked me if I wanted to come to his place for dinner. Before I could answer, he put an arm around me. "Come on," he said. "Come home with me." And just like that, we started hanging out. He was an interesting guy. I'd skip class, and not only would he not report me, he'd skip with me. Most of the time, we'd just smoke on the roof. We didn't talk much, just sat facing each other. Sometimes I'd look over at him and find him looking back at me through the haze of smoke. I tease him sometimes. "Why are you always staring at me? Am I so handsome you can't resist?" He'd just smile, never confirming or denying it. Truth is, he was really good looking, especially when he smiled. If I were a girl, I would have definitely gone after him. I don't know when it started, but we grew closer and closer. Maybe it was all the cigarettes he smoked with me. Maybe it was all the sunsets we watched from that rooftop. Or maybe it was because the food at his house was delicious, and his mom was so kind and took such good care of me. We became inseparable. I started listening to him, started studying again, started living a normal life. My uncle thanked him, saying he was a godsend, that no one else could have gotten through to me. But my uncle was wrong. He didn't get through to me. He saved me. He saved me twice. The first time was on that roof. The second was in an alley. That night, my fever hit 103. I was practically burning up. My uncle had left for a mission 2 weeks earlier, so there was no one at home to look after me. The class president took me to the school nurse for medicine, then got permission for us to leave so he could take me home. He thought he could leave me at his house, that his mom could take care of me. I thought so too. Neither of us expected to be running for our lives down a dark, narrow alley that night. My head was spinning as he dragged me through the darkness, until we saw a dumpster up ahead. In my dream, my mind suddenly became crystal clear. I tried to pull my hand away, to stop what he was about to do. I wanted to scream his name, but I couldn't. I've undergone a lot of special training, including lucid dreaming exercises. I can never say his name in my dreams again. I can only watch helplessly as it all plays out again. And he will do exactly what the official report says. He'll knock me out and hide me in the dumpster. Then he'll turn around and lead the men chasing us away. He'll run into a dead end, and they'll stab him in the chest. I woke up in the evening. I opened my eyes, drenched in a cold sweat, to find someone sitting by my bed. It was Gary. I never expected him to take care of me. He was even good at it, meticulous and considerate. But it felt strange, like the last meal before you're sent to the guillotine. We spent nearly a week in this bizarre atmosphere, until the day I was fully recovered. It was a small, wooden good luck charm. As he placed the cord around my neck, he squeezed my shoulder. He said my health was terrible, that I was always getting sick. Getting sick is nothing, I thought. In a place like this, just staying alive is a miracle. We stood in front of the mirror, our reflections side by side. He asked me if I liked the gift. I told him I'd love anything he gave me. He smiled and said I had a sweet mouth. Then he looked me in the eyes, his expression serious. Look closely. I got it blessed just for you. I hope you'll always be safe from now on. Gary had just left when I received 2 messages. One was good news. One was bad news. The good news: a deep cover informant had found the key evidence and was trying to get it out. His exact location was unknown, but he was most likely still in the country. He was probably trying to get across the border. According to the original plan, as soon as we had the evidence, we would move to arrest Arthur. Given the current situation, we'd have to settle for getting the evidence first and figuring out the next step later. But even though Arthur had fled, his top men were still around. It wouldn't be easy for the informant to get the evidence to the police. To get a message out, he needed someone with a certain amount of freedom to move around. So soon after, I received a new mission: to meet with the informant and retrieve the key evidence. To ensure the safety of the evidence, the mission briefing only revealed my identity. The informant's identity was kept top secret. In other words, even if the Vaughns intercepted the mission details, they wouldn't get their hands on the evidence. The informant would only show himself if I went in person. The date of the meeting was approaching. I started counting down the days. And with just 1 day left, the unexpected happened. Arthur Vaughn, who had been on the run, secretly returned. After a forced strip search and a dose of sedatives, I was taken to Arthur's secret residence. And there I ran into a familiar face. Surprised, "Officer? Oh, that's right. You're not Julian. You're an imposter." I was on my knees, hands tied, with 4 or 5 guns pointed at my head. Arthur sat in the main chair, watching me with a smug smile. It was my handler, Jenna. What was his name again? Arthur smiled, pulling Jenna closer. She leaned in affectionately and whispered in his ear. I remember now. Alex. Officer Alex. So young and so promising, Officer Alex. There was no doubt about it. My identity and mission details were completely blown. Whatever was waiting for me wasn't going to be good. So there was no point in pretending anymore. I let loose on Arthur, not holding back, even managing to insult a few generations of his ancestors. Arthur didn't even get angry. He motioned for his men to lower their guns. "I never should have let you leave my side," he said. "Now look at you. After spending so much time with those 2 boys, your manners have gone to hell." He then glanced over at the 2 Vaughn brothers seated on either side of him. Gary sat to Arthur's left, his face as cold as ever. On the other side, Justin, despite having 1 leg in a cast, couldn't hide the gleeful, "I can't wait to see this shit go down" look on his face. I ignored Arthur and turned to Jenna. "Why?" She shot me a look and told me curtly that she had always been one of Arthur's people. I must have looked horrified, because Arthur, who had been staring at me the whole time, started laughing even harder. "Miss Jenna is a smart woman. She knows her future is brighter with me. Officer Alex, I admire you. If you're willing to work for me, I'm willing to forget everything that's happened." Arthur was trying to flip me, but all he got in return was more cursing. His men moved to shut me up, but he raised a hand to stop them. He let me go on for a full 10 minutes. Then he pulled out his phone and showed me a video. It was of a middle-aged police officer walking calmly down the street. "Recognize him? Do you know how many ways I have to make him disappear? Want to see for yourself, Officer Alex?" Arthur finally got the expression he wanted to see on my face. He laughed, loud and unrestrained. He knew he had won, because the man in the video was the only family I had left in the world. It was my uncle. Arthur wanted me to go through with the meeting with the informant. He was going to use me as bait to lure him out. According to the intel Jenna stole from the department, this informant's security clearance was extremely high, even she couldn't decrypt his identity. But this informant had been embedded close to Arthur for a long time. An informant who could get that deep, who could get his hands on the key evidence. Arthur was furious. He was determined to catch this person himself. The address the informant left was an abandoned warehouse. Arthur had already had his men scout the location. An hour before the scheduled meeting, Arthur and his crew arrived near the warehouse. The sun had set, and the woods around the warehouse were dark and eerie. Arthur's convoy was hidden among the trees. Time was ticking by. With half an hour to go, I was taken out of the car. Arthur signaled for his men to uncuff my hands and feet. Then he put his arm around my shoulder, whispering in my ear as if we were close. "A little friendly advice, Officer Alex. Don't get any funny ideas, or I wouldn't mind seeing you go up in fireworks." He dangled a remote control in front of my face, a clear warning of the consequences of disobedience. Arthur had strapped a bomb and a listening device to me. He would be monitoring my every move. If I didn't follow his orders, all he had to do was press a button, and I'd be blown to pieces. Cold sweat dripped from my palms. I clenched my jaw. Arthur finished speaking. The surroundings fell silent again. In the quiet darkness, the only sounds were the rustling of leaves in the wind and the occasional soft noise from his men moving nearby. I started to count the seconds in my head. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes until the meeting. I looked up at the warehouse in the distance. A single light hung above the door, flickering on and off, the only source of light in the darkness. Arthur raised a hand and pointed at the warehouse, silently telling me to go. I nodded and started walking, obediently moving forward. The overgrown dirt path was difficult to walk on. It was too dark to see clearly. I stumbled along, slipping every few steps. I hadn't gone far when I suddenly let out a yelp. I lost my balance and tumbled to the ground. Arthur's eyes, and the eyes of his right-hand man, immediately locked onto me. And in that 1-second window, everything changed. "Don't move! Police!" In an instant, Arthur was surrounded by 3 armed officers. Jenna was on his left, another male undercover cop on his right. And the person holding him in a chokehold from behind was Gary. The dark woods were instantly lit up, bright as day, by flashing red and blue police lights from all directions. Arthur Vaughn and his entire criminal organization were finally caught in one fell swoop. Arthur never would have guessed. The so-called informant meeting was actually a setup to lure him out. I had a hand in Justin's downfall earlier. The goal was to create an opportunity for our informant. With the family's attention focused on Justin, the informant was able to secretly get the key evidence out. Next came the arrest. But Justin's screw-up tipped Arthur off that something was wrong. He fled before we could move in. By that time, my cover was about to be blown. Arthur had already assigned his top men to increase surveillance on me. After weighing our options, we changed the plan. We put on a grand performance right under Arthur's nose. The good and bad news I received, the new mission plan, it was all deliberately leaked for Arthur's men to find. Even Jenna's fake betrayal was part of the plan. It was all to deceive Arthur, to make him think he was in complete control. In reality, the true mission details were hidden inside the wooden good luck charm Gary gave me. Under the Vaughn's tight surveillance, my handler couldn't pass the real message to me directly. It had to come through someone else. But when he quickly traced the symbol for our private communication channel on my shoulder, I was genuinely shocked. And I was even more shocked to learn that the high-level, deep-cover informant who had been embedded with Arthur for so long and finally obtained the key evidence wasn't one person. It was 2. The first was Mike, who had already sacrificed his life. The second was Gary. But Gary Vaughn was just his cover for infiltrating the family. His real name is Julian. Epilogue: Julian. Julian infiltrated the Vaughn family using the identity of Arthur's eldest son, Gary Vaughn. The entire operation was masterminded by the veteran informant, Mike. Mike had been undercover since the days of Old Man Lee. He was meticulous, his plans a complex web of plots within plots. Even the story about the Lees kidnapping Julian was a setup he orchestrated. It was the only way to get Julian away from Arthur's watchful eyes, so he would have enough time to prepare a new identity for him. But when you spend too long in the mud, you're forced to do things you'd rather not. Not long after Julian had assumed the identity of Gary Vaughn and joined the family, Arthur caught an undercover cop. He tortured the young officer until he was barely breathing. Then he handed a gun to Mike. Arthur wanted Mike to be the executioner to fire the final shot. Julian was with Arthur at the time. He saw Mike, a cigarette dangling from his lips, take the gun with a smile and say to Arthur, "Thank you for your trust, boss." Mike's hand was steady. One shot and a spray of red and white. After that, Julian couldn't sleep for 2 weeks. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the young officer's face. Mike had to pull him aside and tell him to get his head straight. The old informant, his hair gray, stood beside him on an overgrown hillside. The setting sun was the color of blood, so bright it made your eyes ache. Anyone who walks this path knows what the worst-case scenario is. Don't forget who you are. If one day you have to point your gun at me, remember not to let your hand shake. Epilogue. Julian. Julian thought using Gary Vaughn's identity was crazy enough. He never imagined there would be a second person doing something just as insane. A new undercover cop had made his way in, and he was using Julian's old face. But Arthur was suspicious of this new Julian's identity, so he arranged a little torture session. During the interrogation, Julian was nervous too. He was afraid his comrade would say the wrong thing. He was also afraid of blowing his own cover. After all, both he and the man being tortured were imposters. When Arthur ordered him to ask the final question, his heart was in his throat. The detail about Mike using the alias Joe was information he himself had leaked. Thankfully, his comrade gave the right answer. He could finally breathe again. Arthur let his guard down for the moment, and Julian seized the opportunity to get his new brother in arms assigned to him. This was also part of the plan. His own identity was too important, he couldn't risk exposing himself. But he had to do everything he could to get this new brother under his protection. As for his comrade's real identity, he figured it out later, recognizing certain small habits he had when he smoked. His comrade was his closest friend, Alex. For a long time in high school, he and Alex were inseparable. Alex thought their friendship started on that rooftop with that cigarette. But it was earlier than that. Back then, he wasn't even Alex's class president yet. They weren't even in the same class. He was just the new transfer student. When a group of upperclassmen cornered him in an alley and beat him up, it was Alex who came charging in with a brick to save him. They helped each other limp to the end of the alley, just as the streetlights flickered on. My parents told me to do good deeds to help the weak. Not that you're weak, man, you can really fight. But either way, I was doing a good thing, right? Epilogue. Julian. Arthur Vaughn was a sick bastard. This was the third time he'd gotten drunk and asked Julian to hand someone over. He was still obsessed with the face Alex was wearing. Julian refused, his face cold. Arthur just gave him a suggestive look. What? You've fallen for him? Julian knew Arthur's type. He had to have what he couldn't get. He wouldn't give up. As Julian tried to figure out how to handle the situation, Arthur suddenly said, "Fine. If you really want him, he's yours." Julian mulled it over for a long time, trying to figure out Arthur's angle. But it was an opportunity. Julian had been trying to find a way to get Alex to move up in the ranks quickly. At first, Julian only planned to put on a show, not actually sleep with him. But things didn't go as planned. Around the time the sea shipment was due to arrive, Julian orchestrated a whole drama to keep Justin in the country, making it easier to take down the entire Vaughn family later. He even faked his amnesia. The safe house was bugged with a live feed straight to Arthur's private room. Julian had to play the part perfectly, which meant pretending to have amnesia. The handover for the shipment was on a tight schedule. Arthur had no time to come looking for him in the mountains. In the end, he had no choice but to let Justin handle it. And while the Vaughns were busy with the shipment, all Julian had to do was keep up the act for Arthur. He just never expected Alex to go through with it for real. Epilogue. Julian. Julian felt like his moral compass had seriously gone astray. That's how things had spiraled so out of control. But in certain secret moments, he felt a sliver of indescribable joy. Feelings he had never spoken aloud had been buried in his heart for too long. But that day, when Alex cried in his arms, that secret joy turned into a bitter ache. Alex didn't know anything. He didn't know who Julian really was. And he didn't know about the feelings Julian had never said out loud. He couldn't even bear to think about what would happen to them when the truth finally came out. Finale. I was actually doing okay. After a few sessions, I felt pretty much back to normal. But Julian seemed to be taking it hard. Mostly, he was avoiding me. Until today. Took a hell of an effort, but I finally cornered him. I dragged him up to the roof. After all these years, we were face to face again, smoking. He was quiet. He wouldn't even meet my eyes. I finally broke the silence. "Don't you have anything you want to say to me, Julian?" I reached out and tilted his face up, making him look at me. He struggled a little, but I didn't let go. He finally gave in. With a sigh, he started to talk. He talked for a long time about what he did in the Vaughn family. He confessed his feelings, but mostly he apologized. He apologized for what he did to me in the Vaughn family. He apologized for his secret feelings. Seeing him so careful, so hesitant, made my heart ache. He had been my son when I was young. We weren't supposed to be like this. I cut him off. I took his hand and told him I didn't blame him. His hand was trembling slightly. Later, choosing his words carefully, he stammered and asked me what we would be from now on. And I suddenly remembered my 18th birthday. He took me off campus for a fancy dinner. On the way back, we got caught in a massive downpour, and neither of us had an umbrella. So we squeezed under his jacket and ran for the school building. Once we were inside, he was catching his breath, looking at me. And he suddenly asked, "Alex, what are we going to be in the future? Will we still be like this, sharing a jacket to stay out of the rain?" At the time, his random question caught me off guard. But I still answered him. I said of course we would, that we would be the best of friends for life. Actually, I lied that day. I didn't want to just be his friend. And now I decided to tell him that secret. Pulled him into a hug. I told him that everything that happened, we did it because we had to. But because it was him, I wasn't in pain anymore. I didn't blame him, and I loved him. Before I could even finish, he wrapped his arms tightly around me. In that moment, I knew my son was back.